Oh, wait, you're listening.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
You're
Listening
to Radio Lab.
Radio Lab.
From
WNYC.
See?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
This is Radio Lab.
And what we're going to do in this particular show is we're going to,
This is one of my favorites.
yeah,
Favorite.
it should be because you certainly gave it your all.
Exactly. I don't know. What do we need to say here? I mean,
Well-
this is a little bit of a tussle. We sort of wanted to bring it back because, winter's approaching. Things are kind of heavy right now. Could use a little lightness.
Well, so this begins with a very, very successful film editor. With you'll meet him in a moment. Comes to us with an idea, which Jad loves, I hate, and things go from there.
Perfect. Here's now.
Hello, hello.
Yep.
It starts with Walter, my hero.
Walter Murch. I'm a film editor and sound designer. I've been working in film since the late 1960s.
Resume includes
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
The Godfather.
Apocalypse Now,
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
ton of other films.
The thing we're talking about,
Yeah.
so you should know, is the.
One of the more spectacular stories I've ever heard.
How did you bump into this?
Well, I was in Lyon, in France.
Doing a film.
Unbearable Lightness of Being.
This is back in 1986.
I was supposed to be there for a week, and it wound up I was there for a month. And I ran out of things to read, so I went down the street from the hotel, and there was a bookstore, and I was interested, and still am, in cosmology, so I picked up a book by the Carl Sagan of France, a man named Hubert Reeves. Hubert.
Actually, it's French Canadian.
Translates as Carl Sagan.
Merch ends up buying Reeves' book, goes back to the hotel, finds a cozy spot.
So I was happily reading away, and he was trying to explain, with some difficulty, because it's a difficult topic, how did matter condense out of the sort of quark soup that we believe happened right after the Big Bang. And he tried various attempts scientifically, but then he said, to give you a sense of the poetry of this moment, the best thing is the story that Malaparte tells.
Who is Malaparte?
Well, he was a journalist, a poet, a diplomat, soldier, prisoner, film director, and somebody who
Got around.
yeah.
And speaking of getting around, in 1942, a Milanese newspaper
Corriere della Sera
sent Malaparte,
to report on the eastern and northern fronts of the war.
specifically the Russian-Finnish border.
And he had a front row seat of the siege of Leningrad, the agony of the Nazi bombardment of that city.
And it's from there that Malaparte tells the story.
So this one day, this was in the winter,
Malaparte was posted with the Finnish army who were fighting along with the Nazis, and they were perched just north of Leningrad.
on the shores of Lake Ladoga, which is this big lake abutting the city.
And on this day,
The Nazis bombarded the area around the lake. This started a forest fire. Everyone ran for cover.
Soldiers ran every which way, and in the middle of the forest, there were Soviet horses that were locked up in a stable.
And the horses panicked and broke out of the stables. Hundreds of them.
And they just started running.
rushing to get away from the fire.
Right.
So you have hundreds of horses vaulting through this flaming forest,
Heading towards the open space ahead, which was the lake.
and all at once they burst out of the forest and go barreling into the lake, stampeding one on top of the other as they all get deeper and deeper.
Up to their heads.
And it is at this moment when they enter the lake that, according to the story, something very weird happens. In the blink of an eye,
The lake snaps them shut,
it just freezes
suddenly turns to ice.
with a bang. It goes from water to ice with this violent snap, and suddenly the horses are entombed. Malaparte writes that even the waves on the lake were gripped in midair and sort of suspended there.
Fade out. The next morning, when Malaparte and the Finns woke up, they discovered the forest fire had burned itself out. And look at that, the lake has frozen solid overnight. And his Finnish friends said, yes, that sometimes happens. And then they look and see, what are those bumps on the ice over there? They go to investigate and they find themselves in this horrific sculpture garden of horses' heads sticking up out of the solid marble-like floor of ice.
Well, you said hundreds, so hundreds of horse heads.
Hundreds of horse heads.
These are not going to decay, right? 'Cause it's freezing cold.
Those horses stayed there all winter, and Malaparte was there in that region of the world during that winter, and every so often he and the other soldiers would go and have a smoke, and they'd go into the sculpture garden and wander around looking at this miraculous thing.
So this image of the horses frozen in this lake.
This image, beautiful and strange and disturbing and profound in some way.
Made us wonder. It made me wonder, I should say.
I told you at the time, and don't trust this story. It's not. It's scientifically impossible.
And
for a whole lake.
Keeping an open heart, thought, could this possibly be true? Could there be a grain, perhaps several grains, perhaps a lake's worth of grains of truth
Your
to
heart's
this
open.
story?
It's just your mind is like loose, like a sieve. Anyway, we've
be
argued
told,
about this for a year.
Yeah, and you know what? We're gonna reconstruct that argument right now and take this uptown.
All right, let's do this.
To a real scientist.
To a real scientist. In the course of our argument, we ended up going uptown to Rockefeller University to meet a couple people who know about ice.
So we're going to go play with some super cool ice.
Among them, this fellow.
I'm Alexander Petrov. I am the Raymond and Beverly Sackler Fellow.
Do you ever wonder who are Raymond and Beverly Sackler?
They occasionally almost show up, and I almost meet them, but I never have. Yeah.
By the way, the Sackler family has recently come into a bit of controversy. We all know that now. We didn't at the time. In any case, Alex, who must be said is an amazing dude, graciously agreed to demonstrate that you can, in fact, create the conditions of that massive lake inside a tiny little test tube. He reached inside his freezer, grabbed his trusty Falcon,
Yeah, this is called a Falcon tube.
which is a plastic tube filled with water. Now, this is not normal water.
This is the really nice water.
It's very, very pure water. No minerals, no dust, it's super distilled. And he says when you take water like that and you cool it down, you can get it far below its freezing point, and it won't freeze. Unless, that is, you happen to have a horse.
You have a tiny horse,
We have a tiny one.
and we are going to drop that into the Falcon tube and do that. That's going to be awesome.
So he handed us the tube. I'm holding a little vial of super cool water. What, Alex, what temperature do you think this is that I'm
minus
holding?
20.
This is minus 20? See, Celsius.
When does water freeze inside zero? So it's 20 degrees below freezing point, and it's still water.
But not for long, because we unscrewed the cap.
Are you filming?
We held the little plastic horse over the tube.
Countdown or something.
3, 2,
1. Point for Jad, because the moment that little plastic horse hit the water slammed into ice.
I got excited.
Suddenly, that little guy was trapped in an ice cube.
Oh my God, he's
Water slammed,
Countdown or something.
okay, on the count,
Freezing point, and it's still water.
but not for long, because we unscrewed the cap.
Are you filming?
We held the little plastic horse over the tube.
Countdown or something.
1. Point for Jad, because the moment that little plastic horse hit the water slammed into ice. Suddenly, that little guy was trapped in an ice cube.
oh my God, the horse is frozen. That's amazing.
Please remember the horse was plastic. No animals were harmed.
It is honestly breathtaking. It happens so fast.
Catastrophic ice formation, just like that.
Did you hear that C word, Robert? Say it again.
Catastrophic.
This is Virginia Walker.
And I'm in the Department of Biology, Queen's University.
Virginia was one of the many people that we called up to ask, what the hell? Like, why does this happen? Like, shouldn't this water just freeze gradually, the way that degrees Fahrenheit, whatever?
No, actually. So you see, this is why we have to start at the beginning. As Julie Andrews says, a very good place to start. All right, so the only reason that water freezes normally at 0 Celsius and 32 Fahrenheit is that there's something there that makes it freeze. We call that a nucleator.
Sounds like a superhero.
Yeah, all right, so it's a nucleator.
A nucleator is like a seed, right? Didn't know this, but it turns out water almost always needs a seed in order to grow ice.
Because it turns out water by itself is not actually that good at remembering how to become ice.
That is Erin Pettit. She's a glaciologist
At the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
And what she means is that when water cools down, the molecules start to slow their movement.
They get a little bit closer together.
And at that point, they want to all hold hands and become ice.
But the water molecules don't quite remember very well how they're supposed to be organized.
They're like, wait, do you stand here and I stand here? How do we do this again?
They need to be shown what combination of angles work the best to create a nice, stable structure.
What they need is, say, a speck of dust. That's the nucleator. If you throw in some dust into otherwise pure water, now they have a guide.
Because ice can start to mimic whatever the shape of the dust particle is.
But what happens is that the water molecules start to form a cage around the dust particle. And that cage shape is very similar to the shape they need to make ice. And suddenly they're like, oh, that's how we do it. So in a sense, the dust particle is reminding the water molecules how to freeze.
Well, no, I don't think of it like that.
Virginia says it's actually not quite so gentle. Really what's happening is the dust particle is forcing the water molecules into the right shape around it. It's like a command.
It's nothing about memory. It's a physical thing. They just get jammed in there.
Wow, this is like Julie Andrews, like a Nazi.
So then these
Let's
ice...
start at the very beginning.
Start at the very beginning! Stop!
Okay, so if, as we just learned, water needs a catalyst, a nucleator, in order to freeze, doesn't this at least raise the possibility that that Finnish Russian lake had reached a supercooled state? Along come these horses, and they were the nucleators. Maybe they had dust on their hair or whatever, I don't know. But whatever it was, it started a chain reaction. Ice